Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing. Thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd family a part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. Today I want to talk about some college football. Yesterday, of course, was week zero, as they call it. And I've said this many times, but I'll say it again. I hate calling it week zero because zero means nothing. But if there's games happening, there's something. Is it something or is it nothing? So I hate calling it week zero, but I don't really know what you would call it if you don't call it week zero, because next week being week one, they call that opening week. So unless you start calling week zero opening week and then call week one, I don't know what else you would call it, but I hate calling it week zero when there's something and zero means nothing. There was only a handful of games yesterday. Really, truly, the only game that more than likely probably most of the country cares anything at all about was the game over in Dublin, Ireland between Florida State and Georgia Tech. But there was a few other games outside of that. It really just gives teams that never get TV time and never get notoriety and never get talked about and never get publicity to be on TV, because if they play while any other game is on, nobody will watch. But this was, I believe, the fifth game, I think, over in Dublin, Ireland. There was one back in 2022, and I believe there was one in 2016, and then some way back before that. I think this was the fifth game in Dublin, Ireland. Georgia Tech was the designated home team. They actually decided to give up one of their scheduled home games in Atlanta to be the home team in Dublin, Ireland. But I would say that probably 60 to 65% of the crowd was Florida State fans, but it was a designated Georgia Tech home game. And I had thought since probably about May that Georgia Tech had a chance to win the game. And I think I even said here on the channel that it would not surprise me if Georgia Tech won the game. I think Florida State's going to be decent this year, but they're not going to be nowhere near what they were last year, because Florida State lost their best 9 players, and they have not yet got to the point of an Ohio State or an Alabama or a Georgia where they can lose 9 players to the NFL and come right back the next year and be a top 10 team. They're just not that good yet. I still think they can be a 8-win team, maybe 9, but they're not winning the ACC. They're not winning 10 games. They're not going to finish top 10. They're not going to the playoffs, but still 8-4 is not a bad season. But Dabo Swinney said a few years back that the transfer portal wasn't the end-all, be-all, and that he wasn't going to change his coaching philosophy and coaching style to cater to the transfer portal because everybody else is. He says, if I need a player out of the portal, I'll get them. But I'm not going to go use it just to say that I used it. And last year, Florida State was really, really good, and almost their entire roster was transfer portal players. And everybody thought, well, Florida State's just showing you why the portal's so great. Well, this year, Florida State's going to be an average football team, and it's because they use the portal. So the portal works sometimes, but not all the time. And this Florida State team is just showing you that the transfer portal is not always the answer. You have to actually recruit yourself and get the players you think your team needs, and not just go get somebody because, well, he was a good player, he's in the portal. It's not always the answer. So it worked for them last year. It's not going to work for them so much this year because they're not going to be a top 10 football team. And DJU he's a good quarterback. He's just not a great quarterback. He's not going to lose you any games he's just not going to win you any games. He's just there. He's just a piece. You can depend on him to do his job, but nothing extra. He's kind of like that coworker where if you give that coworker 12 tasks, they're going to do those 12 tasks, but they're not going to do anything extra. That's DJ. He'll do what's asked of him, but that's about it. He just cannot consistently throw the ball downfield. He never has. I don't really know the reason, because when he was at Clemson, he had that game against Notre Dame where he had almost 500 passing yards, and that was the most passing yards ever for an opposing quarterback at Notre Dame Stadium. And think about how many prominent all-time great quarterbacks have played in South Bend, Indiana for an opposing team, and it tells you how good of a job he did in that one game. And after that one game, he has just fallen apart. I don't know what's happened, but you can't say he ain't got talent, because he showed in that game that he does. But that was it. He had that one great game, and he's gone backward. Just like once he made one mistake, he's just never recovered from it. When he played quarterback at Clemson, they played Georgia that year. You know, Georgia won the game 10-3. The only touchdown in the game was on defense for Georgia. And it was like after DJ made that mistake, he never recovered. He's just not one of those quarterbacks that could put mistakes behind him. Once he screws up, that's it. But also yesterday we had Montana State and New Mexico. Montana State won the game 35-31. And if I'm not mistaken, Montana State was actually favored going into the game, and they're an FCS team, and of course New Mexico is a FBS team. But Montana State's one of the best teams at the FCS level, and New Mexico is one of the worst teams. And the FBS level, Montana State wins the game 35-31. Bronco Mendenhall is now the coach at New Mexico. Of course, he used to coach at BYU. He left BYU, went to Virginia, made Virginia good again, and then retired, I believe, 3 years ago. Now he's out of retirement coaching New Mexico. So Bronco will get them turned around in a few years, but not this year. But Montana State winning that game 35-31 just shows you that the upper echelon of the FCS schools is now just as good, if not better, than the bottom of the FBS schools. It used to be you could take the worst team at the FBS level and put them up against the best team of the FCS, and the FBS team would still win by 3 touchdowns. That's not the case anymore. There are several FCS teams that could beat several FBS teams. We also had SMU defeating Nevada 29-24. Now, of course, this was SMU's first game as a listed ACC member, although it was a non-conference game. But SMU's coached by Rhett Lashley, who is a really good offensive mind. And I believe SMU's actually going to be really good this year. They're not going to be no double-digit win team, no. But I do think they can come to the ACC and win 8 or 9 games. And it wouldn't surprise me if Rhett Lashley got a call in a couple years to coach a bigger profile school than SMU. But SMU also has some money. So if he decides he likes it there, they may fork out whatever kind of money he wants. But Rhett Lashley will be very successful at SMU. And then a game that was listed as a Sunday game because we know Hawaii, their time zone is way different. Their games actually kick off at midnight on Saturday night. So by the time they end at 3:30 or 4 o'clock, it's Sunday morning here on the East Coast, or Mountain Time Zone. It's still early Sunday morning. So the game was actually listed as a Sunday game since it starts at midnight, but it was a Saturday game in Hawaii. Hawaii defeats Delaware State by the score of 35-21. to 14. I believe Hawaii is 6 hours behind us, I think. I believe that's right. And if that is right, midnight on the East Coast means it's 6 o'clock Saturday night, Hawaii time, which is why most of their home games start at midnight. But they get the win, defeating Delaware State by the score of 35-14. Any thoughts on any of this, please feel free to let me know. Now, it's hard to believe that it's Sunday, so now we only have to wait a couple of days, and week one will start coming up on Thursday. So college football is officially here. If you can separate the politics from what happens on the field, I believe college football, as far as on the field, is better now because with the NIL and all these schools having this money, one school can't afford to pay 20 players $15 million. So it does better even out the talent, and it makes the games better because you're not going to see one school get all the great talent because of the money. So you're going to see 3 or 4 great players go to this school, 3 or 4 great players go to this school. So it's going to even out the talent and make the talent better, which in turn will make the games better. But then you have the political side that shows you every day that college football is no longer college football, and that makes it hard to watch. But if you can separate the politics side of college football from the on-the-field side of college football, I think the on-the-field product is better. It's just hard to do that because when you watch the games now, unless you watch the games with the volume turned down, every time there's a break in the action, the commentators want to bring up the NIL or how much the game has changed or future schedules or the fact that the rivalries might go away. And that brings up all the politics side of it. But if you can watch the game with the volume turned down and just focus on the game, I think the games themselves are going to be better. We've just got to separate the off-the-field stuff from the on-the-field stuff. Let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. I need cheering up. My pet mouse, Elvis, has sadly died. He was caught in a trap. And that does it for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.